I wanted to do a portrait on Jeff Koons. Not only do I have tremendous respect for him as an artist, but I find him really also a bit of an enigma. He almost sort of talks out of both sides of his mouth, to coin a popular phrase. And I want to really sit and have a conversation with him about what he's creating, because sometimes I think what he's saying is really the most intelligent thing I've heard anyone say about, let's say, a particular comment on the world or a particular piece of art. And then other times I'm really not sure whether he's just not totally full of shit. About a year and a half ago, I left Gucci, where I'd been designing for about 14 years. I was the creative director for all of Gucci Group. I was responsible for all design, all image, merchandising, advertising, public relations, store design. Really anything that hit the eye of the outside world. I was used to really moving very quickly and thinking about a lot of different things, which I love, because if I was busy thinking about shoe heels, it was giving my mind a break from our budgets. When I turned my energy back to, going over our budget, I was able to then come back to the shoe heels with a totally fresh eye. It was a great job. I loved it. We had built up really from a company that was nearly bankrupt in 1992 to one of the largest fashion companies in the world. Often I was criticized at Gucci for being a control freak. But I never understood that, because when someone buys a product and it has your name on it and they think, wow, Tom Ford designed this, I think Tom Ford should have designed it. I think it can have contributions by other people, but it needs to be a singular vision of, this is what Tom Ford thinks I should wear. This is what Tom Ford wanted exactly. This is how the fabric was supposed to fall. This is how the stitch was supposed to be done. This is what the lining is supposed to be. This is what the buttons should look like. This is how it should fit, because this is a skirt or a dress or whatever that Tom Ford designed. How can you achieve that without being a control freak? How can you just say to somebody, oh, you guys do whatever you want and I don't care? For me, I couldn't. So yes, I'm a control freak. The reason I wanted to profile Jeff Koons was he's absolutely one of my favorite artists, and I think in a certain way he is the contemporary artist. He certainly thinks so. I'm also fascinated by a certain link with what I've spent my career doing and with what Jeff does. I've always felt that it was part of my job as a fashion designer to sort of figure out what was going on in culture and then to respond to it and to guide and push and direct certainly the visual look of a moment in time. And Jeff's work speaks to that and is about that. You could look at some of his most recent paintings, which are, certainly a collage effect to them, which in my mind, when I look at them, I just feel bombarded with image, which is so much about where we are today and the fact that everything's mixed up and it's just coming at you. And really your mind, is quite, pulled between shoes and hair and a bikini, and should I buy that dress, and do I need that car, and, what is this? And there's a quality, a chaotic, a very slick, surfacey, smooth, very graphic too, very designed, sort of chaotic thing to his paintings in the last few years that I think really resonates. Following art school in Chicago, Jeff hitchhiked his way to New York, where he quickly became the most successful salesman in the history of the Museum of Modern Art. At the membership desk, he sold more memberships than anyone else. In fact, he came up with the idea of tiering the memberships so that in addition to being a member, if you paid more, you got this. And if you paid even more, you got that, which led to people on the board and people at MoMA being really so impressed with his ability to sell more memberships. He was offered a job on Wall Street. He became a commodities broker. He wanted to be separate from the art world. He didn't want to have to create art to sell because he felt it would compromise his art. So being a commodities broker gave him the freedom to actually create the kind of art that he wanted, and ironically, that very same art and the way that he created it made him quite a rich man, and certainly his pieces are some of the most expensive pieces of contemporary art traded today.
I started bidding here at $2 million, at $2 million, $2,200,000, $2,400,000, at $2,400,000. At $5 million, $100,000 it is with Laura at $5 million, $100,000. Are we all done? Fair warning, at $5,100,000.
The physical appearance of Jeff is really incredible. When you meet him, you think he's just this nice, normal, suburban dad type guy. And you really can't believe that he's the one creating the work that he does.
Yeah, I would say that I think this feels just slightly heavy. Because if I look at the model, at least this model, can I see yours, Ed? Yep. And we don't want to lose these flat shapes, because that's the bottom of the can. Correct. Right. Of Play-Doh. Yeah. So if they start to get too organic and you know, move too much, then we can lose that. So we want to be sure that, see, this lip here, we do have a little lip there, but it doesn't get too exaggerated, that we can still maintain a nice...
Well, this is with that nice planing right here.
I know it seems like I'm picking on things,
not at all.
but it's the only way to do this. It's,
Hi, how are you?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. We are going to 27th and 10th, please.
No problem.
I'm not quite sure what I'm going to ask him when I first see him because there's so many things to talk to him about. I think I probably need to talk to him a little bit about his past and his childhood and how he turned into what he is today, but I don't know. So I'm not sure what I'll sort of hit him with first. It'll be the first time I've ever spoken to him when I hadn't had a few drinks. So, we'll see. Well, he's interesting to talk to when you've had a few drinks because he really can talk circles. And after a few drinks, the circles even get wilder, or at least your perception, because I don't even know if he drinks. I don't know. It sort of seems like he doesn't drink. It sort of seems like such a sort of straight-laced, even kind of guy. I mean, the first time I saw the Cicciolina work, I just couldn't quit laughing. I thought it was just hysterical, over the top. Cicciolina was a Hungarian-Italian porn star. He hired her to work with him on the creation of this art, fell in love with her, and then turned their lovemaking into art. It was so bold and so kind of confident, and he is so confident. I don't want to walk into his studio today and be aggressive because I don't want to turn him off, and I'm not here to sort of rip him apart or tear him down, but I am quite perplexed because he seems, to sort of speak out of both sides of his mouth, and is maybe the ultimate salesman.
Hi. Great. Hey, Tom.
Hello, Jeff.
Hey, it's good to see you. Good to see you. Hey, good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, great.
How are you?
Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
You look great. You are a brave man to have us here in your studio, because I don't know how you feel about film crews and people coming in. I remember I would never let anyone in my studio, and even if they came, everything was fake, meaning I would tell all my assistants what to have on their screens and what to have out. Did you do any of that for us before we came today, or is this pretty much the way your studio is?
Maybe we cleaned up a little bit, but this is basically the way
Are
the
these
studio
guys
is.
doing real work, or are they doing sort of work for us to talk about?
No, it's real
Is this
work.
what they'd be doing normally?
Yeah, this is what Dan right now is working on color and printing color, and Luke's working on right now, I guess, colors for a book that we're putting together.
You don't really know what the hell he's really thinking. Whether it is all a bunch of bullshit, or whether it's sincere. Or maybe it is sincere in its bunch of bullshitness. I don't know. Is it air? Or is there actually something in there? Do you often allow people into your studio?
I really like to try to communicate what I think my work's about. And so, it's great, Tom, that you wanted to come here and that we'd sit down and talk, because, I always like that opportunity to try to, be at service to the world.
When you're thinking about something, is most of your work done by yourself? Meaning, conceptually, the idea, the thought, the pattern. I mean, how would, for example, any of these pieces in front of us, what would the creative process be? How do you get to this? And is it something that you do? Does it happen while you're on a plane and you're dreaming about something, or you're thinking about something, or does it come from a more sort of calculated place of what do I want to say?
Well, it's very uncalculated, and it's very intuitive. If you want, I'd like to show you Elvis.
I'd love to see Elvis.
Okay, let's see. Hey, Dan, can we bring up Elvis? This is the design. So whenever I'm making a painting, first I'll create it here on the computer.
But how do you get to this point? Where do these images come from to begin with? And when you collect them, do you already have in your mind what this is going to be?
So making different bodies of work, maybe I'll perform in different ways. But when I was doing the Popeye show, I went through a lot of magazines, just if certain images I had interest in, and I came across this in one men's magazine, it was Playboy, this woman, and there were 4 images of her going across the page. And I thought, this is like Andy's Elvis. It just reminded me, Andy will have the Elvis like this, and she looks a little bit like maybe Lisa Marie or something.
Oh, she looks a lot like Lisa Marie. I was just about to say that.
Just intuitively following my instincts. I had interest in the lobster, and in the background, behind this model is H.C. Westerman. And Dan, can we just go to the background? And I'll show you, Tom, how I built this up. This right here, this is an image of the Dance of Death. Mm-hmm. And H.C. Westerman's an artist that's more associated with personal iconography. But I treated this Westerman like a Warhol car crash and made like 6 panels, turned it upside down, different directions. And then on top of that, I put the 2 women, the Elvises. I mean, here, the lobster is really a reference to Duchamp and Dali. So you have, the handlebar mustache coming up. That's a reference to Dali and the lobster telephone and all the different lobster works that Dali did, but also to Marcel Duchamp, where, he drew on the Mona Lisa. So at the end of this piece, Elvis, you end up with the Mona Lisa. So it's a contemporary Mona Lisa.
So once you get to this, and you're happy with this image. I assume you work with members of your studio to get the image the way you want it on the computer, and then what happens to it?
Well, we have to do a lot of cutting, masking, then it's color. And the whole time it's trying to work with the technology that we have and try to have it be relatively stable enough to go from this room then out into like the studio where people will start mixing colors.
Is it always so quiet in here, or is it just because we're here? Is everyone always this well behaved?
Sometimes you'll hear a little more tap, 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 tap of putting paints
There's no sort of usual music and dancing while you paint? It's always sort of...
Because of the number of people, a lot of people use the headphones. Hey, Pat, could you just crank this down just a little bit? This is one of the Popeye paintings. The background's a Dr. Thornton print. So then on top of that, again, I have this reflective silver, a reference to Andy. And then Popeye's a reference to Liechtenstein. We painted each dot here, just like Roy did.
If a viewer who had never heard of Dali, didn't know anything about Liechtenstein, would they feel the same thing standing in front of this work?
I think that the sensation they would get from it could be slightly different, but whatever level that they're able to have a dialogue with this is, what it's about. So if it's just about looking and say, oh, that flower looks kind of nice, or, that silver, that reminds me of like a stripe I'd like to see on the back of my truck. I'd like to paint kind of a reflective stripe there. Whatever level it is, that's great. We have a new one going now called Peg Leg. We just actually have, my son has this toy, Peg Leg, and I was playing with it, and he had a boot on here just like the other shoe, and I thought, well, I said to him, let's just see if he has a peg leg under here, this pirate. And I pulled off the boot and I broke it, and there was no peg leg under there. There's nothing there. So I brought this down to the studio that day, and I made a little peg leg for it. A lot of times my work will make reference to childhood images. And it's just because at that time in your life, you're open to so many things. You're open to the sexuality that things bring with them. You're open to just the lack of judgment. And so working with youthful images, it's a time when you see blue and it's like, blue's
Blue can just excite you, just for the experience of blue.
Pink and yellow, and really the freshness, the openness to everything.
He grew up in western Pennsylvania. He was the only son of Gloria and Henry KOONS, and he was attending Saturday morning art classes by the time he was 7. One of the fascinating things I've read about his childhood was that his father was an interior decorator, which is already a strange job for a man in the 1950s, at least a heterosexual man. His father had a showroom, and one day one room would be a living room, and a week later it would be a kitchen. The fact that he grew up around commercialism and marketing, and the fact that a kitchen really wasn't a kitchen, it wasn't really anything, it might turn into a living room next week. I would think that it would reinforce the sort of hollowness of what we have today.
This will just be some of the blues they're made for Fernando. So the areas that we're dealing with right here, this is just for blue for what area? Right in this area. We'll have the colors mixed in advance, so it's not that it's a subjective process, because everybody interprets it a little different. So we can control that the color is exactly what we were looking for.
Well, it's your way of actually maintaining, I think, a singular vision and no interpretation by the team that's working with you. It is your piece of work.
That's right.
I mean, it really looks almost like a gigantic paint-by-numbers diagram.
That's exactly what it is.
Are you here checking the colors every day, or is there a little bit of room for a slight interpretation based on eye color and what seems to be the same blue to someone?
Yeah, I have management that's in place that's always checking.
I love that I have management in place. There is something incredibly joyous and happy about Jeff's work at first glance, but there's also something very creepy and sinister and strange and disturbing about his work because of the fact that it is sometimes blown up out of scale, but because it's so almost overjoyous and overly happy and overly slick and overly shiny. And yet, as a culture, we've become only comfortable in this kind of environment. Back in the 80s, Jeff enclosed ordinary vacuum cleaners in plexiglass in a collection called The New. In an exploration of consumerism, his vacuums were suspended in a state of newness, and they appear immortal. Or maybe they were just vacuum cleaners. One of the things that I've been trying to get to, or to at least explore, is that vacuum cleaner a piece of art? Or does the art come from the fact that you have now put it in a work and called it art? Is the guy who made the vacuum cleaner an artist? And is the art actually inherent in the piece of art, or is it part of our perception of the art? I know that sounds like a bunch of...
I tell you, Tom, but, it's a great question. And it's really, like a key question. Where the art is, it's in the viewer. It's not in the object. The object's absolutely, it's inanimate, has no importance, relevance in the world. But the viewer, it's what happens inside them. It's what they walk away with from that experience. That's where the art is.
Is it about masculinity, this painting?
I think so.
The train, the geyser, the strong pirate, the Hulk?
The Hulks are like Andy's Elvises, where he does the Elvises just with the heads. And then on behind that, this is an Icelandic background, very atmospheric. It's a geyser. So I don't know if you've ever seen a geyser. But
Not in real life.
It's very sexual. And
well, and the peg legs I've found sexual often in my life as well. No, I'm serious, because when someone has a peg leg, they're damaged. So even if there was a guy I remember in the late 70s in New York I used to see at Studio 54, the most handsome, most beautiful guy, beautifully dressed, and he had a pegged leg. And he used to go out on the dance floor with a drink in his hand and he'd spin on it, and he was so beautiful. But the peg leg made him accessible. So okay, the sexuality of the peg leg I get. Is there sex in most of your work?
I think it's in everything. And
Is it part of our society today? Is that the sort of undercurrent in most things?
Tom, when I look in, I follow science and deal with sociology. It seems like sexuality, that before anything, the organism, deals with reproducing itself. And that this is really underneath everything the most important thing. After that comes aesthetics and everything else in the world. So sexuality is there, but I think that comes from this archetypal level, very, hopefully, profound level of what it means to be human.
It's unbelievable. Walking around his studio, I'm taken by how much of Jeff's work is not what it appears to be. Incredible. While his inflatables may look like ordinary plastic toys, they're anything but.
You can touch this one, see if it's a little more...
But it is amazing the way you're able to capture the quality of the original vinyl.
When I was younger, I made inflatable flowers, and I worked with real inflatables. And, I like those works. They're great, but they're hard to maintain. Putting them into the metal just fix that type of freshness, and it just keeps that object intact like that. The details are taken down, they're not as strong. Its shape changes.
What's the material that you put on it to to smooth it out.
That's a prime.
A primer?
Yeah. But once we've been able to get a really satisfactory prime on the whole thing, then we'll take it over to the paint shop and then completely paint it. And do you want to go there?
Sure.
And so we have everything painted on this piece. The only thing, Jason, is just the nozzle, correct? So everything's painted there. Somebody involved with this type of painting or something would see this and they'd be pretty amazed because when I first started making the first ones that I showed at the gallery, we were told we had to use decals. And when you'd use a decal there, you would have a raised area around there. But we were able to find these transfers that we put this pigment down through the transfer, and we can have all that detail. And of course, Jason, I can touch this, right? Everything's, it's just smooth as can be. And here we have a wrecking ball. I've always liked this one a lot. This hook normally lifts like 250 tons, and so this is kind of this Duchampian connection. What I really enjoy about art is how, it always changes. Its relationship with you changes every day. And for me, it's always been just really a process of accepting myself and trusting in myself. And I think that's really all that you can do. Trust in yourself, go to as deep a level that you can, and to follow your interests.
People who see Jeff Koons' work often react very differently. Some people absolutely love it. Other people really hate it or think that it just is almost a joke. I think the simple fact that it provokes these kinds of feeling is in a sense a testament of its strength. That is part of the function of art, I think, is to provoke, to make you think. A lot of Jeff Koons' best-known work is big, really big.
It's the form here, the bottom, this, all the forms are the same. Everything's really...
His 40-foot tall puppy was made of steel, soil, and about 70,000 flowers, and stood as a testament to his sculptural imagination and engineering skills.
I like to also make public sculptures, so I designed a piece called Train, and I have two models here. But this is 161 feet tall, and this is a Liebherr crane. It's a large 1750 crane that can lift massive amounts of weight. And this is a basic scale of it. This will be a 70-foot long train engine. This is the actual engine. It's a 1940s engine. And this was one of the biggest engines ever built.
Where's this going?
I thought that it was possibly going to go to Europe. Now I think that it may go to Los Angeles. And I wanted it to function like a rallying cry, just like the way bells or whistles, different things, kind of unite a community together. So once a day, this will function, and it'll start off at noontime. Over a period of probably about 30 minutes, be just building up momentum. The boilers will be kicking up, heating up. You'll start to have steam coming out of this area, leaking down around the pistons, a little leak. You'll have this taking place, and then very, very slowly, it'll just start to go. But very slowly, and start chugging and be building a little more momentum. And over a period of about 2.5 minutes, just keep going faster and faster. Another 2.5 minutes, just keep going slower and slower. My favorite part used to always be kind of that climactic, woo-woo, but now I've come to love these kind of like last drippages.
The post-coital sort of sweet time. With his collection entitled Luxury and Degradation, KOONS recreated ordinary alcohol advertisements with amazing results. These large-scale paintings look original, but were in fact exacting copies. And his sculptures elevated ordinary items to high art.
I was walking down a street in Fifth Avenue, and I saw this liquor train in a window of a liquor store, and I thought, you know, this could be a wonderful work of art, but I wanted to transform it, but maintain its soul, and its soul's the alcohol. It's really kind of a panoramic view of society, how the advertising industry uses abstraction and luxury to eventually bring in degradation to whoever they're targeting as life and to take their economical and political power from them. I think the positive side about luxury degradation is that we can think through this. I mean, yes, you can deal with advertising and you can have these tools. These things are very, very powerful to move and to communicate with people. And it's great to have these tools, but we also need a moral responsibility with them and to be conscious of these things. It doesn't mean you get rid of the tool. It just you have to really be aware of it and you know, use them in a productive means socially.
I mean, when I look at Michael Jackson and Bubbles, I mean, in our culture, a star is something that's worshipped. Mm-hmm. You know, was that an intention in that piece? Or tell me about that piece.
You know, exactly that. The attention that we show to celebrities today, we put them on a pedestal, and he was supposed to be a contemporary Christ-like figure. Right. But, you know, at the same time, I'll make reference to the Pietà, and the whole triangular shape of it is based on classical Renaissance sculpture.
How did you choose the material for that particular piece?
It was porcelain, not only making a reference like the ready-made in Duchamp urinal, of working with the porcelain, making a piece like Woman in the Tub. So I have this very sexual material that shrinks. So when porcelain's in the oven, it shrinks 19%. So that kind of tightness is in the material.
That's interesting, I didn't know that. Do you feel that your work is becoming more sexual, or that you still have that sex drive in your work?
I think it's remained constant. If anything, more kicking it up a little bit, like my Made in Heaven work, you know, that was more visually right on the surface. That was really about the harmony between, you know, a man and a woman, a contemporary Adam.
I like that you spoke about the innocence of that work. Those images, to many people who I don't think understood them or felt them or responded, were that they were pornographic.
I did the Made in Heaven work, and I got involved with Ilona. This type of acceptance of one's own cultural history, and that everybody's cultural history was just perfect, is really, I was accepting her cultural history and just saying that, you know, it was perfect.
Well, it's so exuberant, that work. I mean, I think as a viewer, you could feel what you were living through at the time.
You know, absolutely. I saw the Masaccio painting in Florence, and I was really moved by it. And the Made in Heaven work, it was really the metaphor, just the body, the self-acceptance of the body and the display of one's own body. And just to, you know, reveal the genitalia and just be comfortable, you know, with yourself, with the sexual self.
There is a certain, as I said before, surface glamour and shine and sheen to you, your whole story, you as a person, your work. It's very much about our age, that shine, that hollowness, that emptiness, that shallowness. You know, I said to the camera, I want to find out if Jeff Koons is really a true artist. Does he really believe all of this? Or is he absolutely full of shit? I was maybe feeling more aggressive about you and about your work before I came here today and walked through your studio with you and looked not only at the amazing technical effort and skill that goes into the pieces, but also the sincerity. And I felt almost embarrassed to sit down here at the end and say to you, are you totally full of shit, or is this for real, or are you just screwing with our heads?
There's an impracticality to everything. And so a lot of these things are just impractical to start with. And I appreciate, Tom, that you've given the work kind of that time.
Yeah, Alex, this looks like we took that color right to the edge, right?
You know, one of the things about paying this type of attention to works, to maintain trust of the viewer and all that, is always just to watch that, it doesn't become lost in itself. And the thing that I really don't have interest in is craft for craft's sake.
Can we look at it in the light?
When I first started making objects, I'd go to a foundry and, they'd spend attention here, and then the bottom of the piece would just be like a rough cast, and I'd say, well, why isn't the bottom finished also with the same amount of attention? Because, when I looked there, all of a sudden I lost belief in it.
That's much less gray than it was before. I'm happy with that.
The whole activity is really trying to have something which I believe connect the viewer, to life. So it's really, for me, about expansion of what those possibilities are, but the self-acceptance is really at the core. This is the only image I keep in my house.
Really?
This is a piece called Stacked, and I always thought it reminded me of kind of the rational, irrational aspects of power. This pig is the foundation right here. He may actually be the smartest one, and the bird, could be absolutely clueless. But so this felt like a little bit like Asian philosophy. So.
Oh, thank you. Is this for me?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's great.
Very sweet.
Yeah, great.
And great. Thank you. I wanted to know where Jeff Koons finds inspiration. So we left his bustling studio
Thanks, Tom.
and headed uptown to the center of the marketing and commercial universe. That's my Texas manners. I should have stayed there and put you in the
We'll
door.
go up to Broadway and 44th Street.
Okay.
Do you love New York?
I do. I like it. I've been very involved with my work, so my life tends to be from my home to the studio, then to wherever we have to travel to, whether it's Los Angeles or Germany, back to the home, to the studio. But what I like about New York is it just kind of thrusts itself on you. So when you can't be so intimately involved with things, automatically they're just there and they kind of thrust themselves on you.
The reality is we can't really see what we're in. We're so in it, we don't see. We don't see our world. Jeff's challenging us with that. He's challenging us and saying, look at your world. Look at these things. Look at them through a different perspective. Where are you really? What do they mean? What is the comment on where we are as a culture that we're missing completely because we're submerged in it?
Did you ever see that when they used to have the camel guy blow the smoke ring?
Yeah. I don't know that I ever saw it in real life. Was it before my time? When did they take him down?
I think it's over here. Reminiscent of it would be the cup of noodles.
With the steam. What does this place make you feel? Does it make you feel the optimism of our culture? Does it make you feel the seedy side of our culture? Which I don't know. What do you feel when you stand here in the middle of Times Square?
I feel inspired. I like all the color and the movement.
Authentic design. And I think Jeff is probably just being a part of his moment, creating what comes naturally, and that is ultimately commentary on where we are. And it will also be so rich 200 years from now to look back at that art that Jeff is creating today, because it will certainly be very different than what we feel about it. It might all look quite quaint and sweet, because of course everything in it will be out of date and will be gone, and the graphic quality will look retro. And of course, the vacuum cleaners will look like pieces of a stagecoach. It will be very interesting. It will let people know, in a sense, that we did understand the weirdness of our world. Only Jeff, by the way, will ever know in his heart whether he was sincere with what he was doing or whether he really just was pulling it over all of us. And maybe it doesn't even matter, because maybe if he was completely insincere and even deep, deep, deep down inside he thinks they're all such fools, this is just a bunch of bullshit and I've just totally washed over it. The fact that we've been challenged enough to even examine this and to think about it has made his art real and has made his comment real. And perhaps that's his idea.
Stay tuned for an exclusive look behind the scenes of Iconoclasts, up next on Sundance Channel.